Hi, I'm Min Tran, Head of Marketing and Strategy for Symplify Canada. At Symplify, we're always looking for ways to help marketers take their digital transformation journey to the next level. And that's why we're so happy that you're here today to join us in our discussion on digital transformation. We'll cover trends that you need to be aware of and tips that you need to know to make your journey a lot easier. And joining us today in our discussion is Carl Boutet. Carl, we're so lucky to have you today. Carl is a thought leader in retail and digital transformation. He travels the world speaking at conferences and teaches at the MBA level, both here in Canada and in Asia. And most recently, Carl published his new book, The Great Acceleration, The Race to Retail Resilience. And we'll discuss some of the topics that Carl discussed in his book during our session today. And with the vast amount of knowledge that you share, Carl, it is with great pleasure that I also announce that Carl is our strategic advisor for retail and digital transformation. I'm really excited to see what you and Symplify can do together to help businesses go through this digital transformation. Thank you so much, Carl, for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me, man. I'm really excited as well. It's an exciting time to be in this business, and knowing that the digital transformation is at the core of a lot of business success right now. So being with you and Symplify is knowing that we have this partnership is just one more great way to support these small, medium businesses that are going to need to really accelerate, no pun intended, their digital transformation.
Well, talking about acceleration, I mean, what we know over the past decade at least is that year over year, businesses are increasingly adopting digital into their operation. And year over year, they're seeing how important it is. And so that's a clear and steady trend until last year. COVID hits, and then digital transformation was no longer a nice to have, it was a must have.
Absolutely.
And if you did not have digital as part of your operation in your delivery, survival was very tough.
Absolutely.
And so, in terms of digital acceleration in your book, can you expand on what that means?
Right. So first of all, the notion of the acceleration, why is it an acceleration, is because these are trends that we were already witnessing, as you pointed out, in steady growth. But there was this huge, explosion, if you want to call it, of a digital adoption that was imposed, quite honestly, by the shutdowns and all the first waves of the pandemic created in retail. So a lot of businesses found themselves either well prepared for that, or at least better prepared than others, and some weren't prepared at all. It really sort of exposed the shortcomings for those that weren't prepared, as to now they thought, well, how is this possible? How is my business closed? How am I not able to still engage with customers? I mean, what did I miss along the way? And in some cases, they might have had a small presence, and we know vast majority of retailers have some sort of online presence, but that wasn't enough to stay relevant. And actually, before writing The Great Acceleration and coining the term, and back in April 2020. I was really studying and thinking about writing a book around retail relevance. And there's an index in the book that I've been working on that's inspired by research from Barbara Kahn at Wharton. So I've been working and developing this framework, but the acceleration pushed that even further once again. And what I think the most important, so there's a lot of focus on the Great Acceleration, it's sort of a catchy thing, and it was in the context of the Great Depression, the Great Recession. Now we could look back on this period as a Great Acceleration. But I think the more important message is the subtitle.
Yes.
And that is the race to the resilience. And to know what resilience for me is, this notion that we go towards a 50-50 world, that's where organizations, brands, retailers feel as comfortable dealing in digital manners as they are in physical. And how can we get to that?
No, absolutely. And I mean, one of the things that you've highlighted, or actually quite emphasized in the book, is the Great Acceleration will lead to this 50-50 world, where 50 is in person and 50 is digital. can you expand on what that 50-50 world looked like?
And it's an important point because I think some people sort of jump to the conclusion that the 50-50 means 50% online, 50% in store, just to keep bringing it back to sort of the retail realities. And because in the book, where there's a lot of data points and charts around the world showing how e-commerce adoption really exploded, as I was just pointing to earlier. But what I really mean by 50-50 goes beyond e-commerce. The 50%, the word I like using more and more is digitally enabled. I think it's a powerful term because I think the idea is as we go to this 50-50 world, what I'm really hoping, quite honestly, is that we don't have these charts anymore. We don't even care what e-commerce is anymore because we're going to have harder and harder time telling it apart from regular commerce. More and more, we're talking just about commerce, right? And how do we stay relevant to the customer? And we know that that path to purchase is more and more digitally enabled. So just to keep sort of pulling those two things apart, I find we're sort of doing a disservice in many ways to our organizations because we're saying, well, Carl, you're e-commerce and this is your responsibility. Min, you're physical, you run the store, and we don't. We each have our own agendas, but that's not serving the customer properly. And the race to the resilience, this 50-50, is merging our two worlds and making sure that we're working hand in hand and doing the best we can to serve the customer in a manner that matters most to them.
No, absolutely. And I know that we're emphasizing e-commerce and retail in this discussion, but really the great acceleration, reaching this 50-50 world, is beyond just e-commerce, it's beyond just retail. It touches all organizations. We're talking about nonprofit, we're talking about public service.
Absolutely.
We're talking about all organizations. I mean, what we have seen with COVID is, they were forced to put into digital operation, digital solution. Consumers, citizens, donor have now all accepted that this is the default. They liked the convenience of it, and I don't think after the investment in the infrastructure or the user experience that we will go backwards. So yes, this 50-50 world for retail and e-commerce is important, is the focus of our discussion today, but really it goes beyond just
absolutely
just that.
I think there's two key points in there, Min, that you bring up. One is the notion, I even hesitated putting the word retail in the subtitle because I think it's a bit of a loaded term and people associate retail sort of with the traditional local store, but we know now that the retail dynamic goes into it permeates into all industries and it influences how the examples you just gave in government and hospitality and healthcare, how they address their customers is very much inspired by sort of these retail models that we've been working with, because it's in our case it's been sort of our livelihoods. For them it was, now they're saying, okay, we need to change how we do things, and they get inspired by the way that retail has been doing it. So it's interesting that you bring up those points because it is an important, I think it's an important factor that yes, we're talking about retail today, but the idea is I like to talk more and more about B2C really, because I think those dynamics are the same. It's the same client, the same person. It's when they're dealing with in a healthcare environment, saying why is there so much friction here? When I can deal so easily with XYZ retailer that's doing a good job of doing, enabling, digitally enabling the interaction. So that is for sure a huge piece. The other thing you're bringing up, I think it's important too, is again back to digital enablement. It's understanding that it's not just e-commerce, it's not just transactional commerce. It's everything that comes before and after it. And that acceleration is as, if not more important than the e-commerce adoption. And I think that's something that we need to focus on more and more, because businesses think that, a digital transformation is I got a transactional website, I'm good to go. Yeah. I'm done. I can check that box and move on to whatever's next. But the reality is, it's an ongoing process. It's definitely iterative, and we're not saying that just to create more work. We're just saying that the way the consumers and society is always sort of adopting new ways of doing things, well, there's always going to have to be new ways for us as businesses to make sure that we're staying relevant, and it doesn't mean do everything and chase the latest shiny object. It means we just always have to be paying close attention to the way that the customer, the consumer wants to engage with us, and choose the right ones for the right reasons.
Absolutely. And I like the fact that you emphasize the consumer, because it's really consumer expectation, customer expectation that is driving the digital adoption. It is how they want the service to be delivered in their way, in demand, which digital allows organization to do. So we have a bit of a paradox in that on one side, consumers have a high expectation. They prefer and want, digitally deliver services.
Mm-hmm.
They want a digital transformation.
Mm-hmm.
Organization, they see that as well.
Mm-hmm.
They know that digital services will increase engagement,
Mm-hmm.
Potentially conversion as well. Yet there's still sometimes some friction, some challenges for these. They know that they need to do it, and yet they don't.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I mean, change is hard, especially for legacy organizations that have been around a certain way and have had success, quite honestly, doing it that way in the past. Mm. It makes it more difficult for them to sort of get the buy-in they need, and it's usually not at the most senior levels. They sort of see the forest. It's when you try to get the organization at the operational level to sort of follow suit and reallocate resources. Shift resources into new investments that maybe certain people in the organization don't understand, and that can resist a change. In the opening quote I have in the book is the famous Winston Churchill quote that says, "A crisis is a terrible thing to waste." And the reason I put that as the opening quote in the book is because the pandemic, quite honestly, is that crisis. And we know that these leaders that are saying they're trying to get their organizations to follow suit. And I say organizations, I'm not just talking about these massive 1,000 headcount. I mean, even a small, medium business that might have 15, 20 people in it to align those people and get them behind the change initiative. If this pandemic didn't provoke that, didn't create the crisis that you need to sort of create change and sort of stimulate that change initiative, well, I don't know what will. But so here we are today, where we see these things, we see these massive shifts. To your point, there's no going back. Obviously, when stores reopened, people went back into stores, and that's the important piece of the resilience narrative. It's not the idea of the 50-50 is not to go all digital either. You got to find that balance, and 50-50 is sort of this conceptual target that we're aiming for. We're not going to land exactly there, but at least it's going to influence us in a certain direction, so that we can hopefully build that resilience that's going to allow us, whatever comes next, we'll have those sort of two muscles ready to respond either on the physical or the digital side.
Absolutely. Maybe there might be a new formula, which is it might be 50-50, but 50-50 equals 100% customer experience is what we're all driving towards, because that is now really the key differentiator between a good organization and an awesome organization, is how they deliver the customer experience. At Symplify, we the question that I posed to you, why haven't organizations done so when they know that they need to do so? We had been fortunate to be able to help organizations through their digital transformation. And I think there are, based on our learning, based on our engagement, there's five components, I think, that are key. And it's more than just digital transformation. It's more than just buying an e-commerce platform. Yeah. It is really an organizational change, an organizational transformation. Step one being, know your objective, know your goal, and what you want digital to do for you. Because knowing the goal and knowing the objective is going to be really, really key to that second piece, which is, what data points? Where are you can get and collect all of the data? Because if you know your objective, you know your goal, then you can be very precise in terms of identifying what is the right data points that you need to collect. And when you're considering data points, there are the two P's that I think everyone should be considering. The first P is permission. When you're collecting data, you need to know all about, you need to be able to collect your customer's permission. Without their permission, you can't market to them, you can't communicate to them. And with all of the new regulation and laws already in place and soon to be in place, this is going to be a key thing. So the first thing that you need to consider when thinking about data collection is how you can collect permission and consent. And then the second part of data collection, when you're trying to identify, well, what are you can collect, is how are you can use the data. And so that second P is personalization. And we talk about the customer experience, and it's really the personalized customer experience. So you need a thoughtful approach, a thoughtful strategy in terms of how you collect the data so that you can collect the permission and deliver exceptional personalized customer experience. Then beyond that, then comes the tool. And the great thing about the tool and what we have seen over the past year or so is that digital transformation, more than any time ever, has become more affordable and more accessible to organizations of any size. They are more user-friendly. They empower. They make the life of the technology team easier, while empowering marketers to do what they love to do best without any code. And so, in terms of selection of the tools, you should be looking for tools that are easy to use. You should be looking at tools that will allow you to consolidate data, because consolidation of data is going to be key to delivering exceptional customer experience. You should be looking at tools that will make the life of IT easier and will empower the marketers so that they can do more themselves. But at the end of the day, it's just a tool.
Yeah, but I love those 5 points, because I think often we skip some of those crucial steps, and often we get excited again by the shiny new solution, and we invest in this solution without having gone through the steps, the important steps you just pointed out. And guess what happens? The solution doesn't get used. You get frustrated, like why did I even invest in this? Because if you've skipped over any one of those steps, basically you're setting yourself up to have a nice new solution that's not going to get the leverage the way it should be. It's not going to collect the things the way it for the right reasons, and we've seen so many of those over the years, and it's too bad, because businesses only have a finite amount of resources, and to make those smart decisions is really so important.
Yeah. I mean, I think the toughest part in terms of this step is actually the next step. Like I said, it's just a tool, and the tool is only as good as the user. And so what really needs to be carefully thought about is people and culture. And so organization, as part of digital transformation, also need to pivot a little bit and to start thinking with a digital-centric mindset. A data-centric mindset. They need people that are digital first. They need to build a culture of experimentation and testing, because really experimentation, a culture of experimentation and testing is really one of the secret ingredients that allow some of the most successful organizations in the world to be as successful as they are, because they're constantly learning both success and failure in terms of how they can improve.
And going back to your previous question, what is that resistance to change? Often what is at the core of that is the fear of failure.
Yeah.
Because if I'm going to change, I might not succeed in everything I'm going to do, all the change initiatives that I'm bringing. But as you just pointed out, which is I think is really the core idea here, is look at the companies that have had the most success are also the ones that have accepted that failure is part of that success. That not everything's going to work out well, but I think your five stages or key concepts are a great way to hopefully minimize those risks of failure, because nobody likes to fail, obviously, but we have to learn to live with it and learn to learn from it, quite honestly.
You know what? No one likes to fail, and others have failed, and you can learn from that failure. And so I think the last step is really be open to get help. be open to get expert advice. They can help accelerate the digital transformation, and they could be the seed, the core of changing the culture. They have, getting expert help into the organization, such as yourself, from strategy, Symplify, from an execution standpoint, will allow your organization to avoid the traps, because we've gone through it already. We know what best practices are, and we could also be the seed to build that culture, teach the in-house team so that over time that they'll be able to do it themselves.
Absolutely.
And beyond just expert help, technical expert help or strategic expert help, digital transformation is a key initiative for government. They know that that is going to be the economy of the future, and so there are many programs, both federally and provincial, that are there to be taken advantage of, where government is willing to fund your digital transformation. So getting expert help, funding, technology, those are no longer, I think, as big of an obstacle anymore.
Just taking that first step, and it's really, just deciding that you got to either start somewhere or at least accelerate what it is you've already started to catch up to the consumer, but take that first step.
Absolutely. Well, talking about taking that first step, in regards to what you see for the upcoming year, any insights, any trends that you think retailers or any organization should be aware of?
I mean, there's a bunch of important trends that we're witnessing that should be catalysts to taking that first step making that first step even further. There's a lot of concern right now in the market around the death of cookies and this sort of thing. So the need to sort of build that primary relationship, not be reliant on third-party data. So to make sure that we're creating content and opportunities to engage directly and give reason for our customers to want to maintain a close relationship with us, so that we can personalize and gather the data. I think that's a big thing that everybody is really kind of top of mind for marketers of all sizes, quite honestly. But sort of the counter to that is the privacy piece, and we know there's a lot of new privacy legislation. It's a lot to keep up with in Canada and here in Quebec and other provinces as well, that we know that there's
globally.
Well, yeah. So it goes back to GDPR, which was something that was really sort of an eye-opener for a lot of organizations, the idea of what even a data citizen is. So we're having to think about this all the time. But the best way to sort of not have to worry about that is to build that primary relationship, get that consent, create content and engagement that consumers actually want, and you'll have no problem, being able to serve them in a way that's meaningful and that they're going to want to maintain and even grow a relationship with the business, and then hopefully that's where Symplify comes in and makes that automation that much more seamless and powerful.
And Symplify does. I mean, one of the great things about Symplify is that it was built with data privacy mindset first, and so we are already GDPR compliant. We know how to manage data and consent and all of that, and so it just makes that next step a lot easier.
Absolutely.
Carl, hey, this was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for being our strategic advisor on retail and digital transformation. And to our viewers, thank you so much for your time. We want you to stay in touch, so follow us on LinkedIn, visit us at www.symplify.com. And if you want to know more about how Carl and Symplify can help you from strategy all the way through to execution, contact us directly at engage@symplify.com. Once again, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Min.
Yeah.